Hoyte, that was awe-inspiring.
Yeah, what do you want to know?
Oh, geez, we could talk for about 9 hours here, what I want to know.
Yeah, that's why I brought these guys.
To keep yourself off the hot seat, I understand. This is your fourth film with Christopher Nolan. And the first thing that I want to talk about is what is the importance of this format to you and Chris Nolan in storytelling?
Yeah, it's of huge importance to us. All the films we have done, we have really invested a lot of time in creating experiences that can be experienced on a big screen. So we always have tried to find and search for ways that could help us, enhancing those experiences. And the format itself, like the format of the negative, optically is very important to bring it in the most visceral way we can imagine. For us, it's all about not only creating cinema that is intellectually challenging, but it's also creating cinema that is somehow very experiential. Something you can really dive into, and you can forget the world a little bit, and you can not only see a film and think about a film, but you can also really feel a film, and that's I think that's why choosing that format is very important to us. Yeah.
And how is the decision made between what you're going to shoot on IMAX in 1565 and what you would shoot in 5x65?
Yeah, very bad. It's a little bit banal to give you this answer, but very often it's very practical choice, because if we could, we would love to shoot everything on the biggest format every time. The IMAX cameras, they're incredible. The negative that they produce are incredible, but it's a very noisy camera, so it's not a very good camera to do very intimate things, with actors, and it's very hard to record dialogue. So we automatically had to find the second best format, which is 65 millimeter 5x. Which we then use for dialogue. But through the years, we always had sort of this lust to shoot more on IMAX, and we figured out ways to, shoot more things on IMAX with the help of, we did with David, we did some engineering on, for instance, blimps for the IMAX, and there's clever ADR to be done, etc., etc. But we, practically, it's mainly a practical choice.
David, for you, Christopher Nolan has pretty much pioneered the use of this format for narrative feature films, which has driven IMAX to grow substantially in a market that really wasn't touched on prior to feature films. That now we're seeing, the major Marvel movies and all these other movies touching on this aspect of this formula. This format? What has that done to help IMAX to innovate now, and what can we see in the future?
Well, we've tried to keep this storytelling alive. Thanks to Chris, for the first 30 years, IMAX from the 70s to 2000, we were really a documentary company. And then we did a thing called Fantasia 2000, our first feature. But these were all films shot in different formats, not IMAX. But it took Chris's insight. He grew up in Chicago, saw our dome thing at our dome screen in Chicago, and he saw things like The Dream is Alive, Everest, Titanica. He longed to do something in this format. So he came to us after we did Batman Begins. We did some 6K film out, which nobody thought possible. And he said, boy, IMAX really wants to push the envelope. And then we started to collaborate on The Dark Knight, and I can never forget those first times people saw his movie and that shot going on in the building of The Dark Knight. The air was just sucked out of the room. You could hear people go, because so many people had never seen it. And this film that you just saw here on this giant 81-foot screen has been seen in this format almost 2 million people since it opened in July. So we're very proud of it. Yes, hooray. We had 30 theaters in film, and of course we have, Chris loves our digital systems also, but this to him is the gold standard. We now have, from the one theater at Ontario Place that opened May 21st, 1971, we now have 1,700 theaters in 85 countries. And believe it or not, we have a feature movie that runs full feature movies on a day-and-date basis at 12,500 feet in Lhasa, Tibet. That's how much we've grown.
If I may, I'd like to add something that's really significant about seeing the film in this format in this theater. You're watching every shot that originated in 15 perf 65 millimeter is being printed from the original camera negative. So you're basically seeing his dailies represented in edited form here. And it's very rare, even, it's traditionally rare, it's certainly rare in 2023, to be seeing daily prints right off the camera negative, edited together in this way.
The gold standard.
I can confirm that because we actually, when we shot in LA, we watched daily sometimes in this theater. So.
And one of the other innovations, I mean, there's so many in this, but was the use of black and white. And for Kodak, they confirmed that this was the first time that black and white had ever been cut for 65 millimeter. And that, for Andrew, for you at Photochem, that was an extraordinary amount of work to be able to just handle the black and white, if you want to address that a little bit.
Well, yeah, to stop hyperventilating when he asked us to process this stuff. And he's still upset that we didn't figure out how to handle 70 millimeter black and white positive, which would have been an even larger task. But when Photochem started providing 65 millimeter services in 2004, we built our negative processing tank to be able to handle 65 millimeter black and white one day if we ever had to. It still wasn't plumbed for it, so there was an enormous amount of engineering that had to go into getting our chemicals, our black and white mixing chemicals, to a replenishing area, a central area of our basement, over to our 65 millimeter negative tanks. In addition to that, whenever we needed to, well, we only have one 65 millimeter negative bath, so whenever we needed to process black and white, we had to go through an elaborate multi-day process to remove all the color negative chemistry. We had to add storage tanks that could hold that, and these are 8,000 liter tanks. Photochem is one of the last major labs left because it still can process film quickly and provide quick turnaround and allow filmmakers to shoot on film. But those tanks are huge, so that amplified the challenge for moving all that chemistry to get the color chemistry out and the black and white chemistry installed, with cleaning the tanks in between. In addition, we had to figure out just how you handle 65 millimeter black and white negative, which is a lot thinner than color negative. So through a lot of testing, we learned all the things you shouldn't do when you're running 65 black and white negative through your color tanks.
Yeah, and also we had to plan our production around your schedule very often.
Because they're shooting, and the next day, where's my dailies? So it was a logistical nightmare. And another thing we didn't mention, and I can hand it over to Dan here a bit, but this film, black and white, does not have any anti-halation backing on it. And that meant that there were some internal reflections off the film gate, and we had to anodize backplates, which you could do at Panavision. We couldn't do that at IMAX, so we're actually, our new camera we're building it so that we have a black backplate. So we learned a lot from this. Chris always pushes the envelope from the very first days doing it in IMAX to running cameras backwards, heaven forbid, in Tenet, and now with this movie with black and white, the first time 15 proof black and white has ever gone through a camera.
Dan, your name has become synonymous with custom optics and tailoring optics to the taste of the cinematographer. For this, you created a couple of different lenses, if I understand, a 40 millimeter close focus and a probe system with two different taking optics. Do you want to address that a little bit and the challenges of that?
Yeah. So every time we see Hoyte, there's this mantra: closer, faster, wider. He seems to challenge us with that every time. I guess with Hoyte, he can't reveal everything that's going to happen with the show, so everything's a little bit of a secret. So he kind of gives these little clues. So with the beginning of Oppenheimer, you'd say, I need this probe system to get into micro photography. I need to get in really close. It has to be away from the camera. And we kept probing the questions, okay, how close do you want us to get? Does this have to extend 18 inches away from the camera? He says, yeah. By the way, this has to be waterproof. And so, okay, we'll add that to the list. And has to be at least a 40 millimeter. And he just kept adding things. At the same time, he would never really give us what he wanted. And we kind of had a lot of failures because I kind of put the pieces together. Thank goodness his assistant Keith would say, well, this is what it's going to be
Who's
actually
here
used
as
in.
well?
Keith Davis, kind of my lifeline. But what the final moment was that we really came down to is, do you want this to be a perfect lens that has all the aberrations corrected 100%, or do you want to have a little bit of character on the edges? And he says, oh no, I want that character on the edges. So he wanted to retain the imperfections, something that really makes it really jump out on the screen.
Just because I knew that I would get it faster.
You get it faster, well, yeah. I mean, imperfections, something that really makes it jump. I tell myself that every time I look in the mirror in the morning. I mean, imperfections are great. But along the way with the probe, many mistakes. I don't know if we want to talk about the time you crashed the prototype.
Yeah, I crashed the prototype, but I think we had many crashes of different equipment. But what I think is worth to say is that, I mean, if you look at some close-ups here on IMAX, some of them, they are so intimate and you really feel the proximity of the camera, or at least we wanted the audience to feel the proximity of the camera. But this is only possible if you create lenses that you can literally put in the actors' faces, you know. Right. And that's very often not just a thing you grab off a shelf, especially when you work on IMAX. You know, it's a wish, and that's where Dan is completing us. I mean, all the stuff that you see and that is unique to this film is very often either a piece of engineering that Dan has done, or David, or Andrew, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty challenging. You really don't think about the magnitude of IMAX. If you look at even in Oppenheimer, the difference between 5x65 and then IMAX 15 perf, the numbers, I have nightmares of 2.774 inches by 2072 high throughout the entire production, because trying to make a lens cover that diagonal or that size is nearly impossible. And as a result, we forget things. For instance, part of the probe, which was dunked underwater, I forgot one of the primary physical limitations of when you dunk something underwater, your close focus goes away. And the first test, we thought we had this probe lens totally under control. We get the results from Keighley saying, yeah, it wouldn't close focus at all. And I'm going, I don't understand it. And we're completely oblivious that once we dunked it underwater, we were no longer lens to air, it was lens to water, which was basically another optical element, and it threw the close focus. So we had to do another iteration. And then it was just a complete learning curve with that, and which is great. I mean, ever since I've known Hoyte since, Interstellar, I mean, he's always pushed the limit of what can be done, and it was great with Oppenheimer because, like you said, the 40 millimeter, challenged Hoyte, says, hey, we have this 40 millimeter IMAX lens that we think we got the lines pretty straight, and it's a little bit faster than the 40 you've been using, and we can get this thing down to within 2 inches of the front element. And you gave it a whirl, and I think you used it a few times.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very innovating, but it was pretty challenging.
Now, that is something that was a sort of a mantra for IMAX filmmakers for the longest time, is don't do close-ups of human faces, because seeing 81-foot tall human face is too disconcerting for the audience. But obviously you embraced it so warmly here, and it works extraordinarily. But was there a fear of that before?
Yeah, I mean, in general, there's a fear of that. Not only in IMAX, I think if you're going to make a 3-hour-long movie and it just has talking heads in there, it's a challenge. You know, it's especially if you're you know, kind of into immersive cinema. You know, but I believe that a face can become a landscape as well. You know, it's there's enough magic in there worthy to fill a big screen like this. And the biggest fear was not necessarily to be very close on faces, but the biggest fear in this film was very much just the lack of dynamics. You know, where you in a normal production you can sort of, you know, step back into wide shots and enjoy the vista and sort of take yourself out of the film a little bit, you know, and then then in order to get back in there. So I was always very concerned that, you know, because it's all so close, that we wouldn't have any dynamics in there. But we try to incorporate the dynamics just sort of in a little bit of a closer plane, you know, instead of from very wide to close, we are from close to extremely close. Yeah. No.
And I thought it was fascinating and ironic that you take the smallest location known to man in this tiny little conference room with the largest format known to cinema.
Yeah, but we've done that since the beginning. We also did that in Interstellar and in Dunkirk. We love putting the camera in tiny little spaces, you know.
You love hand-holding it through those places, which people said for years could never be done, but you proved it could be done.
Well, you know, sometimes you have to because there's just no space for a tripod, you know. No, but you know, I always believe that limitations, you know, as much as they sort of take control away from you, they also give you something back. You know, they always make you approach problems in a different way. It's like, how are we going to put the camera here, and how, you know, and sometimes you don't get the perfect shot, and you have to adapt it a little bit to the lesser perfect shot. But you learn that also these kind of things sometimes just feel more real, feel more visceral, you know, feel more truthful somehow.
And David, on the subject of limitations, there was a limitation of the running time of this film. If you want to address that a little bit.
Yes, the
Thank
longest...
God, a lot of people are thinking.
The longest film we've ever made was 2 hours and 49 minutes for Interstellar. And Chris came to Patricia and I before this movie started and said, well, David, it's kind of tough because this movie is X pages. I think he said 800 pages, and he did the math. This is a 3-hour movie. You can't play it. So what we did immediately is we rushed over here. We had actually Tenet on the projector. We knew how long that was. We added film to the edge. We ran over the edge, and I went to engineering saying, you got to build a special ring to extend the platter, take out some bolts, and we proved we could run 3 hours. So we have adapted 30 projectors. And I just wanted to, if I don't get a chance again, you saw an incredibly good performance tonight, the sound, the focus, the cleanliness. And that's thanks to Irving and Yvonne, our projectionists from IMAX. And we can't thank enough those guys in the booth who do this day in and day out. They do an incredible job for us.
So that's the exhibition of it. Andrew, you and I talked a little bit earlier about the test work that has to be done in order to get into a Christopher Nolan film and get into some of the work like this. And Photochem was involved with Hoyte and testing early on, if you want to address some of that.
Yeah, and it plays into the fact that Chris always wants to see the film as it's taking shape in the way that an audience will see it. So when he planned this, he was clearly going to shoot 5-perf 65 millimeter and 15-perf 65 millimeter, but we would need a printing negative in both formats, and it would be color and black and white, and there would be a handful of visual effects. So we had to assemble a test roll of around 10 minutes in length and take that through the dupe cycle so that all of the shots tracked, like the black and white tracked all the way to a duplicate negative, because everything that's originated in 5-perf is represented here by a 15-perf duplicate negative with a letterboxed image. And vice versa, the 5-perf version of this film has extractions that have been removed optically from the center of the 15-perf frame and gone through an IPIN, interpositive internegative dupe cycle. So the test process was like a mini version of the complete post-production process. And you learn a lot while you're doing the test process. It's a pretty elaborate thing to do, but it's necessary because by the time we're done, we know when we get to post, it'll be okay.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. So in that test process, we knew we'd probably make about 40 prints, including the testing. So we simulated 40 prints on this test roll, because this test roll, as Andrew just said, we've never actually had black and white go through the process, go through the cleaning, go through the perk and the Lipsner Smith cleaning machines. So we tested that out to make sure this would hold up, because as Hoyte said, we are actually using the original negative on the IMAX and the black and white 15-perf. The original negative is cut together here to make every print. Yes, we have a backup, but that testing was very, very needed, because to make a dupe negative of this movie costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars and takes extra weeks. We didn't have that time. So it's a I like to call it a sort of a pipeline of understanding between all these people up here and Kodak to get this stuff to happen.
Could sit up here forever asking questions, but Hoyte, when Chris Nolan comes to you with an 800-page document or whatever the craziness was, where do you start in your process to start to plan to execute that?
The moment I read it, it's not 800 pages, it's 150 or 140 pages. The moment I read it, I'm in, and Chris shares his projects late, so he's not somebody that tells you a year in advance, I'm gonna do this movie, read it, and starts ping-ponging. He loves working things out himself for a long, long time, and he shares it when he's truly ready. And the moment that you read the page, you're kind of full speed and full throttle from that moment. Has been with every film like that. I remember Interstellar, that we had never worked together, but the day I finished reading this 158 document, which it made my my hair smoke and my ears bleed. It was so intense, but I just came in and said, oh, I'm going to read the script, and I was sitting there, and straight away when I was finished reading, he wanted to talk to me about it, and I didn't know what to say, and the next day we were scouting, and that has been kind of exactly that way with every project, He is very precise in his writing, so you can really see a script as very instructional, very informative. Like I would love to take credit for the choice of when black and white and when color in this film, but the truth is it was all written in the script. He wanted to figure out a good way to separate those two narratives, Strauss's and Oppenheimer's. And so I work with it, but I also read it and I understand, okay, this is going to involve, Andrew, it's going to involve Dan and David, and it's going to involve Kodak. We have to get this done, analog, since we so much committed to this analog format. And maybe I should also tell a little bit about the reason why we are committed so much to shooting on black and white and not go digital. And that is that if you look at it on this screen, you'll see, you see the film in its fullest resolution. It's absolutely, there's no higher resolution on the planet right now, I think, that can shoot like that. But the moment that you go digital and that you don't make prints, you will scan it. And the moment you scan it, you're going to lose quality. You have to compress, and you have so much information, your computers can't handle it. So the only way to maintain that quality is actually just to make a contact print on a piece of film. So that whole sort of thing of doing things in camera and keeping it analog is just purely because it really maintains the quality of the film.
I would add that Chris creates his digital cinema masters from an interpositive or a print from the original negative because he really wants the audience to experience a print from the original negative, not the original negative itself. And I've had the lucky experience of sitting with him, looking at original negative scans versus interpositive scans, and understanding with him why that matters, that difference. And it's about texture, it's about feel, it's about something that more tangible that he's going for.
Yeah, we're definitely trying to keep this art form alive, and it wasn't for the people here and at Kodak, it would be difficult to do this, and the champion of this really is Christopher Nolan, and we can't thank him enough for keeping this art form alive. It's a struggle, but we're willing to do it, and we want to expand it even more and get more filmmakers involved. And you ASC people, we strongly suggest to take a look at film. I think Hoyte knows more than me, but I think actors bring their A game when they almost hear the money going through the camera. And I think the A game comes to a film set maybe a little more easily than it does to a digital set. I'm not sure of that. You want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, they have to bring their A game because an IMAX camera, it sounds like a little diesel engine, and if you're an actor and you have that thing right there, you have to perk up a little, It's harder and it's more elaborate, and you plant a camera like this on set, you automatically you'll notice that there is people tread around it a little differently, The camera is in a way much more sort of the epicenter of a film set, opposed to a digital camera, which is just a piece of junk that stands there and people don't really respect, And I'm not saying that it's junk in a way that you cannot do good things with it, because you can do beautiful things with it. I'm more talking about the aura or sort of that you create around the camera on set, which is very pivotal of how, the chemistry of how people move around it and how people work around it. And I think definitely an IMAX camera, which is a gigantic gray square-sized box,
but you carry it around very well, so it's not that big. And I'd like to say, we're building some new cameras, and it's not gonna be as quiet as Dan's camera, but it's going to be quieter. So we're inching towards being able to use it in more places. With Gary Rizzo's great attenuation of the audio, we think maybe in Chris's next picture we might be able to get a little more dialogue.
We should talk a little bit about Dan's camera as well.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to let you gentlemen handle that. Thank you to the four of you for coming out. Thank you to all of you for coming out for this extraordinary theatrical
Thank you very
experience.
much.
Thank you.